Welcome to the Mind Myself podcast. I'm Esther, and it is my pleasure to be bringing you information about healthcare approaches, health issues, and people's health journey stories, all from the complementary, holistic, and integrative perspectives, helping you become your own best health advocate and helping you make your own informed choices because you matter. Welcome to Conversations with E. I'm Esther, founder and CEO of Mind Myself, and it is my pleasure to welcome our guest today, Jennifer Lynn. Welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you, Esther. Thank you so much. Thank you for this opportunity to be here with you today.
Excellent. I am so excited to hear what you have to say because we're going to go out on skinny branches in this talk, and I love it because we don't normally go quite that far, but today we are. But before we jump into talking about reclaiming your purpose, reconnecting your divine feminine language, let's talk a little bit about who you are. Tell us about your credentials and what you do, please.
So I'm Jennifer Lynn. I'm a spiritual consultant. I'm a shamanic druid priestess. I'm a Chinese medicine practitioner, which means I'm a licensed acupuncturist. I'm also a certified herbalist, and I'm a teacher of modern day mysticism, and I'm a minister of the Circle of the Sacred Earth, which is a church of animism, fostering shamanic principles and mystical understandings. And I've been in practice for 30 years. It's amazing to say that to myself. I know. How did that happen? I just don't know. I work with people in person as well as by distance, doing all of my spiritual consulting work I do, by distance, by Zoom, by telephone. The acupuncture, obviously, I do in person, but that's really not where we're here today. We're here looking more at the mystical side of my practice.
Wow. And why do you love what you do?
I love seeing people. First of all, I love to see people feel better when they leave a session, right? Better than they felt when they walked in. I love helping people to make those connections, those linkages that allow them, it empowers them to empower themselves, to see where they are in their lives, to see the process of their lives, and to connect into the sacred conversation, that co-creative relationship that each one of us has with the divine, with the sacred, with God, goddess, creator, whatever word you want to use for it. But to help people see what's there in front of them, see where the sacred is trying to talk with them, and to help them actually make those connections to be able to hear it and work with it for themselves. It's just a beautiful blessing. It's just a gift. I enjoy it so much.
I love that. And I know we don't typically talk about what we're going to unfold shortly. There's more teasers, but body, mind, spirit. So often we ignore the spirit part of things. And as you said, helping people recognize what's in front of them. And our whole goal with Mind Myself is to help people everywhere, especially women, become their own best health advocates. And this is a part of the journey. So let's just jump in. How should we start this off? I know that you put a quote in here. I feel like there's something I'm supposed to do. I think many women in particular have this nagging feeling. Let's talk about that right off the bat.
I see it so much right now. We live in incredibly powerful times, this immense space of transition that we are living in here on this planet and in this cosmos, in this galaxy at this moment. We live amongst cycles every day. You can see them with the setting of the sun and, that darkness of midnight, and then twilight with the rising of the sun, and then the movement through the day again to the setting of the sun. We see it in the 28-day cycle of the moon, moving from the dark of the moon up to the full moon and then waning back down to darkness. And we can see it in our earthly cycle as well, that 365-day cycle that we go through, right? From winter to spring to summer to autumn to back to winter again. Our galaxy has a cycle like this as well. And we are amazingly at a new beginning for our galactic turning. This is a new cycle, a new galactic cycle. If you remember that, Y2K and the whole what was it, 2012, at the end of the Mayan calendar. That Mayan calendar, one of the things that it does, amongst many things, is that it tracks that galactic wheel. It tracks that galactic cycle, right? And it helped its own people know when the next turning would begin, so that you could tell where you were galactically. Were you in galactic winter, spring, summer, autumn, right? Because of course the energies that you have access to at that time are different. Well, here we are, we're in this new galactic winter. It's a galactic new year. We've just tiptoed into it. We're, maybe not even a decade in, to be honest with you. But here we are. And that means that we're moving out of the time of the masculine energy being dominant and moving back into the time where the divine feminine energy becomes dominant. Each one is equally divine feminine, divine masculine, and there's divine creative as well, right? We have a 3 for the Trinity, for the wholeness. But during the divine masculine half of the year, that time of completing, that time of outwardness, that time of doing, that those energies have to remain dominant, which means the divine feminine energies have to recede, right? Just like with the moon, right? As she moves to fullness, that darkness has to give way because you get more of her light, right? But then as we move back toward the dark of the moon, that light has to yield and we come back into those dark inward spaces, right? Those divine feminine spaces. So here we are, we're coming back into this divine feminine time. And so that urge, that impetus to call forward the divine feminine wisdom is rising. And there are so many women who are hearing this call, and men as well. Men also have linkages and connections into the divine feminine. But in my experience right now, it's more women than men who are hearing this call to reconnect to their divine feminine lineages and to bring the wisdom of those lineages, that wisdom that needed to be quiet when the divine masculine was at its dominance, right? But now that the divine feminine is rising again, that voice of the divine feminine eldership and that divine feminine wise woman, it has a place again. There's a space for it and there's a need for it. And women are hearing this call. They feel it stirring within them, right? And this is the question that I hear them asking. I hear it all the time. I feel like there's something I'm supposed to be doing, but I don't know what it is. How do I find it?
Well, and talk a little bit more about, for someone joining you who understands that this language that you're speaking and has dived in themselves, that's really awesome, and I'm sure they're tracking you brilliantly. For somebody who is new to all of this and go, divine feminine, divine masculine, what do you mean? Maybe explore that a little bit more, please.
Okay. So divine feminine versus divine masculine, they're two halves of one whole, right? We need both of them. And each turning that we go through, whether it's the moon's turning, the sun's turning, the earth's turning, has both of them, both halves of them. So the divine feminine spaces are those inward spaces. It's the spaces of drawing within, of hearing within the quiet. It's spaces of instinct and intuition. These are spaces of nurturing, right? And there's spaces of that creativity that comes from diving deep within, from listening within. We talk about, in the Celtic tradition that I work from, we talk about at the beginning of the year in Samhain, in that winter space, we get drawn back down into the earth, into the womb of the goddess, the womb of the mother. And we just state anew, right? We listen to her heartbeat, we listen to our heartbeat to remember who we are and to release whatever remnants of any other cycle, any other turning, any other season that we've been through, to let them go so that we can hear again that truth of our own heartbeat. And then in springtime, that heartbeat, that truth brings us back out and we begin the next active cycle of the turning and creation, which then brings us into the divine masculine spaces. The divine masculine is that space of outwardness. It's that space of doing versus the being of the divine feminine, right? It's the space of acting instead of listening that you have the divine feminine, right? The divine masculine is that outward reaching, that energy, that activity, where the divine feminine is that space of receiving and listening and knowing.
So we're referring to, some people may have heard this, the yin and the yang of things, or just the duality that we live in, that some people are saying, well, let's get out of duality, but the duality does exist, certainly in this plane. And it doesn't mean that anybody of any gender doesn't embody. We all embody these dualities, and the masculine and the feminine in whatever degrees, and we tend and lean towards certain ones. Would you agree?
Yes and no. Yes, it is very much like the yin and the yang. Actually, those divine feminine energies, that's the yin, for those of you who are familiar with those concepts and those terms, right? That is that yin space, that cool, quiescent, nourishing space, versus the heat and dynamism of the yang space. But it's not just duality, because there's also the creatrix, the creator energy, that is the third. And in the Celtic tradition, we are not a dualistic tradition at all. We are a tradition of Trinity. And even Taoism really is a tradition of Trinity, because when you look at that yin and yang symbol, right, with that dark half and that light half, it's the circle.
Yes.
And the movement that creates that circle as yin becomes yang and yang becomes yin, right, with those little dots, that's where that little white dot in that, that black section, that's where yin becomes yang, in that constant process, right, that constant co-creative flow that is the Tao. And that flow creates the circle, which is the circle of creation. And so it really is not a dualistic system. It is a trinity. It's just not something that gets spoken about here in the Western world. In the Eastern traditions, this is very much clear. This is something that in my Chinese medicine studies and Taoism studies, we talk about this all the time. It's not two, it's three, right? And ultimately, it's just one. And that's the same in the Celtic tradition, and it's the same here. We, each of us, have feminine aspects and masculine aspects. We, each of us, have those energies. And that beautiful conversation between the two, that beautiful pulsation between the two, that is the flow that is us, right? It is here within us, that flow of the moon, the flow of the sun, the flow of the earth. Even what my tradition talks about, the great breathing, the Hindi tradition talks about this as the spanda, which is where our exhale as humans is actually the inhale of the divine. And as the divine exhales, we inhale the exhale of the divine. And it creates this spanda, this breathing, this sacred flow, this sacred pulsation, right? The inhale being the divine feminine aspect, and the exhale being the divine masculine aspect. And the flow between the two, the process itself being the creative aspect.
Wow, thank you for that insight. Man, we could so talk for hours without even scratching the surface, and we only have a few minutes today. Jennifer, you mentioned something about lineage.
Correct.
Can you talk a little bit more about lineage and what that means in your context?
Sure. So we, each of us, we're souls having a journey, right? We're moving through experiences, we're moving through lifetimes. Most metaphysical traditions believe that you have more than one lifetime. It's not just a once and you're done. Your soul has a checklist that it's working on. There are things that your soul is working on, upholding in the universe, upholding in the divine creation, and also things that you're learning as you're remembering the fullness of your divinity. And so you come into different lifetimes, right, in order to check off that checklist, go to school for a little while, let's get some work done, right? That's just the way one of my teachers talks about it. So what are you working on in this lifetime? And let's see how we can make that happen for you. But as your soul is moving through this process, you are, like I said, that you have a relationship with the divine, with that spanda, with that great breathing, with that creative, co-creative process. There is something that your soul is upholding. And in that process, you are related to other souls who are doing this work as well. And this is what we mean by your lineage, right? There are different lineages as well, which I'm not going to get into because then we'll really go down a rabbit hole. But that divine feminine aspect of you, the way that you are working to uphold, to further, to deepen, to support that divine feminine impulse within co-creation, you have a lineage. There's a group of other souls that have that work in the same way or work similarly or are supporting also that same process. And so you have a connection to them. And each one of you, as you go through a lifetime, as you're doing work, you add to what we talk about as the great tapestry, the weaving of that lineage, to all of the experiences and all of the knowledge and all of the power that flows through that lineage to you and to everyone else who is connected to it.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, our journey as a soul, whatever somebody's believing, I happen to believe that too, that I'm a spiritual being on a human journey. But we're here to, I love your idea of a checklist. We're here to do a checklist or learn something or grow something or repair something. And what I'm hearing you say is we have people that we will continue to connect with, and other souls that we might do it on various different lifetimes. How does that relate to healing and the issues that we're learning and presenting and resisting today?
So you do work in connection with them, but you also work sequentially with them. So when your soul is not in a given incarnation, another soul from that lineage may be here, picking up the threads and the impetus of that lineage, right? Continuing to work it. So then they lay down some threads, and then another one comes in and they lay down some threads, and then you come in and then lay down some threads, right? So it's a co-creative process. Again, you're not working in isolation, although any time when you're here on the planet in this beautiful journey, you may be the only one from your lineage here. Maybe not, but you might be. But how that relates to healing is, and what we're talking about here today about reclaiming your purpose, that, oh, I feel like there's something I'm supposed to be doing, but I don't know what it is. When we were, again, as the energies of the divine feminine came to their maximum and then they had to yield to the divine masculine, some of those lineages had to be woven temporarily to a close, right? They had to breathe because the divine feminine, again, she had to recede because it was time for the divine masculine to have its dominance. And so some of those lineages got temporarily and correctly, this is a natural process, right? Woven to a close, like the darkening of the moon in the sky, right? When she darkens, you can watch her, like she diminishes, right? There's less and less of the moon visible. And it's the same idea, is that during this time, as the divine masculine was moving to dominance, the feminine had to recede. And so now that we're moving and she is growing again, those lineages need to be reactivated, reconnected. And those people who are here going, oh, I feel like there's something I need to be doing, but I don't know what it is. It's because they haven't figured out how to connect back to that lineage, how to open and untie the knots that were tied at the end of the last cycle in order to allow that creative flow and that knowledge of that lineage to come through them, to connect into them and through them again. And
so how do people do that? How do you start the process? Clearly, that's the work you do. So if somebody wants some help in that, that's great. But for today's conversation, how does somebody start undoing those knots, reconnecting, stepping into that unknown?
That is some of the work that I do, and I do a lot of it. I get a lot of it, just kind of happened organically. People started coming to me, and this was the issue. And my allies would be like, come on, let's go, let's track it down. My healing allies in the other world, in the world of spirit, in the world of soul, would say, let's go here, we'll show you. And then we would untie the knots, right? And allow those power lineages and those wisdom lineages to flow again. And that is work that I can do. And sometimes you will need to work with someone like me who can do this. There are times where the knots are tied in certain ways that you can't untie them yourselves. But just being aware that these knots exist, that you have a connection to a lineage, and that question rising up within you, oh, what is it that I'm supposed to be doing? I know there's something I'm supposed to be doing. Is that lineage calling to you? Remember that spanda, right? It's that sacred, you breathing in that exhale of the sacred with the sacred whispering to you, it's time, it's time, it's time. So one of the best things you can do is start to just be aware of that. Be aware of that call starting to activate within you, and make space and time for yourself to sit, to be quiet, to allow yourself to sink into you and begin to search for those ties, for those little knots, right? To search for the thing that connects you back to them. It might come to you through dream, it might come to you through meditation, It might be a song that tracks over and over and over in your head, and you're like, why am I singing this song, right? If you can sit with it, follow the lead. Spirit, the divine feminine, she wants you to find these. She wants you to untie them and to reestablish the flow of the lineage. Follow the guidance that she gives you in whatever form it comes in. And if you can't find it yourself, you can always work with someone like me.
Excellent. And it seems to me we're hearing the message over and over again in so many different levels and aspects and modalities. Come to stillness, be mindful, be aware, do nothing sometimes, like schedule nothing, so that we may connect with our inner voice, with the divine, however we conceive it, but to that place of source. I'm hearing it over and over again, and I hear that from you today, and I think that's just so beautiful. And when we do, whether we're working with somebody like you or we're creating that space in our lives, what is the potential for that to bring? I know you had mentioned something about knowledge and power and self-understanding. Can you explore that a little bit?
Sure. So all of these, like I said, this lineage, it is something that it's, this lineage, you're not alone in it, right? And it's been weaving through different cycles and turnings. And so there is all kinds of ancient wisdom that is there. There's wisdom from past turnings, right? There's the wisdom of experience. There's knowledge, there's power, and that can look very different for each different person. For someone who is called into the healing arts like I am, perhaps it's knowledge and understanding of herbs and how to work with them. Maybe it's the understanding of the energetic matrix of the universe and of the individual, of the psyche and its relationship, the soul and its relationship to the co-creative cycle. Maybe it's actually an incredible gift in music or math, right? Gifts in language, skills in diplomacy and negotiating, being able to create peace and create balance between things that look like they are opposed, right? Being able to create that third energy that then offers balance to allow flow between the two things. There are so many different things that it could be. Of course, now that we are looking at these specifically through the lens of the divine feminine, it tends to be also the gift for visioning, the gift for prophecy, the gift for being able to dream in a way that is healing, is co-creative, is even oracular, that helps people to give messages, right? To allow communication between the seen and unseen worlds. All of these are things that are possible within those divine feminine lineages. What your unique divine feminine lineage is something that you'll discover as you start to reconnect.
Wow. And what I'm hearing is whether somebody is, I'll call it dismissively, but I don't mean it in that way, totally accepting of the woo-woo conversation, the spiritual nature, or if you come to this as a really practical, hands-on person, but you give yourself space to be, to consider, to become aware, you can take it in any direction that you want, that you're being called to take it into. And you don't have to be forced into a particular way. It's about revealing who you really are, the true nature and the true path and the calling that is within you. That's what I'm hearing from you.
And allowing that true nature of you to reveal itself to you, right? This is it. You're in this space. I know there's something I'm supposed to be doing, but I don't know what it is. So if you allow yourself to step out of that doing of the divine masculine space and come into the being of the divine feminine space, to that quiet, right? To that stillness. And allow, again, here we go, that allowing, that's the divine feminine aspect. It's not activity, it's not doing, it's allowing, it's receiving the truth that spirit is offering you, the gift, the vision of you that the divine is offering you. What you do with that is up to you. But first you have to be able to see it and go, that's really interesting. I'd never thought of myself that way before.
Right? I love that. And creating space. I need to do more of that myself. I know this. So this has been such a good reminder. As we draw this conversation to a close, Jennifer, what's one thing you'd like to leave your listener with today?
You are a beautiful divine creator here in this moment. However it is that you think of that, however it is that you see that in your relationship with the divine, you are a manifestation of the divine. You are a sacred being here, not only to co-create with the divine individually, but as a group, as a whole. In the Celtic tradition, we say that everything has an Oran Cree, a heart song. And this is the song that the sacred uses to sing you into existence and to keep singing you into existence throughout any lifetime, right? And when the need for that light, for that vibration, for that beautiful divine emanation that you are, comes to conclusion, then that song ceases, right? But since everything has a heart song, it is also, every heart song is a part of what we call the Oran, the great song of life, which is like a choir of all of these heart songs singing together. You are not alone in this. You are here amongst all these other heart songs. And that song, that beauty, that vibration that the sacred is singing to you, it's singing to you because it's needed, and it's needed here now. You might sit here thinking, what am I doing here in the midst of all this chaos and change? It's because your light is needed here now. The wisdom that is within you, within your soul, within your lineage, is needed here now. Remember that.
Your light is needed here now. So awesome. And at Mind Myself, we end with saying, we do this because you matter. Thank you, Jennifer Lynn, for being here.
My pleasure, Esther. Thank you so much. Thank you all for being with us today. Blessings.
Thank you for being with us at the Mind Myself podcast today. We know that time is precious and you've spent some of your valuable time with us. We're grateful. If you would like to reach out to our guests directly, the information is below. And if you would like more from Mind Myself, that information is also below. Please visit our website and check out all the information about the different complementary, holistic, and integrative healthcare approaches, information about health issues, more podcasts, tons of blogs, and we even have a community page for you where you could reach out and tell your story safely, or you could ask questions and perhaps somebody else in the world is going through something similar to you. In any case, we're so glad you're with us, and we're doing this because you matter.